do that.
Sorry.
It's okay. So everyone is here. We have 100% attendance today, which is really great, given that today we're trying to kind of set the ground rules for how the group will be working. So I don't feel like we have to do any more formal roll call because I can see you all here on the screen. And we don't have any minutes to approve. Starting at this meeting, Joshua has volunteered to track our action items. So then we'll be starting the next meetings with a review of the action items from the previous meeting. So our first item of business for today is to talk about our process for working together. And a couple of points of clarification before we dig into that is I sent out emails to the group. Can you guys just like thumbs up if you got the email with kind of the more detailed agenda and the Zoom link and all that stuff? Okay. It looks like that looks like everyone. Yeah. So if email is not a great way for me to get that information to you, I'm going to ask you to take responsibility for letting me know what channels of communication are going to be most effective in getting materials to you, or reminders, Zoom links, etc. So the city is setting up the Zoom links. And I think that it wasn't that easy to find. So I have to send the city an agenda, and they then post the agenda publicly. And then we'll be sending the agenda out to all of us with the Zoom link on it. So but it was on like page 3. So if you're not sure where the agenda is for a meeting, probably the most direct route, and I will try to send out the reminders like I did today so that you get a copy of the link at the top of your email, but just depending on how, my life and work is going, or Joshua or Luke's, who are also helping with these organizational pieces, if we don't get that out to you, you should always be able to find the Zoom link in the agenda that will be sent to you by city staff. This time it was sent by Carrie. I don't know if sometimes it will be coming from Alan, but city staff will be sending out the agenda pre-meetings, and that will have the Zoom link on the last page. And Alan, please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's pretty much on. So it's going to be coming from myself, Carrie, or Rebecca, or admin assistant.
Okay.
So that's up.
All right. So moving on to the proposed process for working together. Hopefully you guys were able to see that in the notes and review it. Would it be helpful if I read through that kind of point by point? Yes, okay. So Joshua, Luke, and I met on Sunday, and this was the proposal that we're bringing to the group, is that just to avoid the kind of labor-intensive work of a full consensus process, but to move us to a little bit more of group agreement than just a simple majority vote, that we try to do decision-making by a simple 2/3 vote for most items, but someone that is against the item and who has a very strong objection to the vote can ask for it to be continued to the next meeting. And then Luke, Joshua, and I would spend the interim period trying to find resolutions and more solutions to that person's objections. And if there's ways that we could tweak the item to meet that, to get that person to withdraw their objection. Anyone have comments on that proposal? I've got 1 thumbs up. Any other? I've got 2. I've got 3, 4, 5.
And the dog.
I just have a quick comment.
Please.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just that, yes, fine to go to a 2/3 vote, but I mean, I would think that we're always going to seek consensus, that we want to try to agree on stuff, but we're not going to get held up by, demanding consensus.
That was our
Right, I mean,
goal in the proposal, was that, you know, we try to work by consensus, but that we didn't want to set ourselves up for the kind of logjam that can occasionally result in the formal adoption of a consensus process. So shall we take a vote officially, take a 2/3 vote to see if we have 2/3 agreement on the 2/3 rule? So if you're in favor of adopting this point of process, please raise your hands. Okay. I think we've got 2/3 there. Perfect. All right, so we'll consider that adopted. Then on point number 2, the meetings on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5 p.m. For now, to be doing that twice a month, and with the possibility of changing to monthly meetings once our work groups get going and active. And then doing our meetings via Zoom until the city goes through its process of making the city meetings in person. So we would just follow the city's guidance rather than trying to come up with our own process of deciding when it was safe for us to meet in person. But then leaving the work groups some flexibility to set their own schedules and type of meeting. So if all the members of a work group feel comfortable meeting outdoors on a deck, sitting 6 feet apart, masked, those are just a few suggestions I would have, then you would be free to do so. Does everyone feel comfortable with that point of our proposal? So just, yeah, thumbs up if you're okay with that. Great. Any comments? Any discussion? Yes, Sunali, please.
I had a comment. I heard what Woody said about the 2/3 vote. And I know we kind of just went ahead to the vote. And I'm wondering if, Woody, if you had some suggestion on how we could maybe modify that. I noticed you didn't vote for that.
Yes, I did. I raised my electronic hand.
Okay, I missed it. Okay,
I thought it was resolved. I mean, it's.
all good.
Yeah,
I didn't see that, so I thought maybe there was something.
yeah, I used my little electronic hand there. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
And thank you, Sonali, for bringing that. It's sometimes hard in these Zoom situations to always be reading all of the factors. So I really, really appreciate people, kind of stopping the flow of the process to point out, hey, so-and-so was not bored. Let's go back and address their concerns. So thank you. And my head's going to disappear for just a second because I dropped my pen. Okay. So moving on to this request, and again, it's not always comfortable for people. And if you're meeting from your phone, it can be a lot harder. But we were thinking that just as a general rule, asking people to use the raised hand function when they want to speak in Zoom, and you can either use the electronic hand or literally raise your hand rather than people just unmuting and speaking. Especially with the lag times in Zoom, et cetera, it can be really hard to deal with people speaking at the same time. So hopefully people would feel comfortable with that. When we have larger points of real discussion, our intention is to plan a time like, okay, how about everybody take 1 minute to comment on this point or 2 minutes to comment on this point, and we ask you all to watch your own time. And of course, the group will be watching the time too, but rather than having kind of a police function of the chairs to ask people to self-regulate in terms of those times as much as possible and have the group regulating those times. I don't think we really need to vote on that. That's really just more of a request. Then we're thinking of not including for now a formal public comment period at the meetings. It's not required because we don't fall under Brown Act. And although yes, Alan, go.
Kenna, I actually do have to note that while I was away on vacation, it turns out that we actually are subject to the Brown Act. I know, I apologize about that. That was news to me too.
Okay, so then we'll probably have to spend some time thinking about what that means moving forward. And I don't think it's probably the best use of our time in the group setting to go through what all the implications of that are, unless you guys would like to try to talk more about that as a group. It looked like Jerry wanted to say something, and then Diana.
Yeah, it's disappointing that, I'd like to know why we're covered by it. The reason that I find it disappointing is especially with Zoom and the way that we're working, a lot of what would be productive is to have serial meetings. As soon as we have the Brown Act, we no longer can have serial meetings. So that means we can't send emails to each other. It puts a whole bunch of constraints as to what we can do. We can't have a collaboration site where we put things because that's Brown Act, unless you open it up to the public, and even there, it would have to be moderated, et cetera. So I'd like to understand what was it that put us under the Brown Act, because working as an appointed committee in the city of Sunnyvale for 3 years, explicitly, we were not part of the Brown Act. Now, part of that was we did not have city council members as members of the committee. The committee was separate. It was appointed by the city council, and there's a liaison from the city council, and maybe that was the difference.
Yeah, Diana. Let's let Diana answer, and then Alan, if you have more input on that, that would be great.
Yeah, my suggestion, you have, as you pointed out, Kenna, a lot of work to get done at this meeting. I'd propose that that I coordinate with you, Kenna, to get a fuller understanding of the Brown Act limitations. I think that's probably kind of the direction you were going anyway. I can tell you in brief answer, Jerry, to your question, that the answer that we got when we inquired, I did inquire, and so did Alan, was that because this is a standing subcommittee, not a short-lived ad hoc subcommittee, the Brown Act applies. And yes, Jerry, in response to your comments, it does limit the way in which, it does affect the way in which any members of this group can get together outside these public meetings to coordinate. But again, that's something that I can go over with Kenna and might be better to cover off topic. As a new city council member, I will let you know, yes, there are definite limitations to the Brown Act, but the upside on transparency, I live it, it's worth it. But I'd propose that I just coordinate with Kenna outside the meeting to clarify the details.
And Sarah, you had your hand up. Did you take it down because you no longer have something to say?
Well, I always have something to say, Kenna, but Diana kind of covered it. And I think what we can do is have staff, whether that's Carrie or Larry, work with Diana and brief you so that you can brief the group. It's pretty straight up. And also from a council point of view, requiring public comment is all part of our welcoming participation from the public and being very transparent. And I don't think it's going to be a problem because I don't think too many people more than this big group are going to come. So rather than take time now, I encourage us to go with Diana's idea.
Yeah, Joshua.
Just in the interests of having some form of progress on this subject, part of what we were thinking when we weren't concerned about the Brown Act scenario was that in general, there would be an email that hopefully the city could help us set up where anybody who wanted to send commentary to the subcommittee, that an email contact could be a potentially primary, if not only, a version of submitting that. And that periodically when we were approaching a decision or looking for input on a subject, that we might put an invitation for public comment in certain agendas and have that published and sort of create specific times for that. I don't know how the Brown Act scenario is going to change or add to those notions, but just to say that that was something that we were aspiring to, that there would be a couple of ways for people to get in touch.
So I think it's clear that the last 2 points of our proposed process are invalid and need revision in the light of this exciting news about our our relationship with the Brown Act. Alan, did you have something else to add, or Diana?
Not too much, but I think in terms of the public comment email, I'm happy that we can always use my email as the liaison to the group's email. So any public comments coming to the group who come into me, I can store them and then have them at the meeting to present, just as an offering of using it that way. That's how we typically do with our other commissions or other bodies. That's about all that I have.
Diana, did you want to add something else?
Yeah, I just like to add an apology, because honestly, there was an email that went out, Kenna, and I concluded incorrectly, apparently, that you were part of that email. So I take ownership for that failure. The goal here is to share full information with your chair and the co-chairs and the committee and not complicate things. So I will be more alert to those email recipient lists.
That's easy to do, and no worries. Okay, so it sounds like the proposed process, at least the first 3 points of it, is acceptable to the group. And we'll consider those adopted, and then there will be more work on figuring out our relationship to the Brown Act and what that's going to mean for our committee. And then some brainstorming on how to move forward with those constraints on us, because I think it will have pretty big effects on how we envision the work of the group in some ways. But we'll explore more, because this is a new learning place for me. So anyone who's interested in learning more about the Brown Act, feel free to let me know, and I'll make sure that you're included in some of those conversations. So moving on, I think now it is time we're just about 4 minutes behind schedule, or 3. So we'll move straight into Woody's presentation of the Climate Safe California endorsement request. Do I need to do more introduction on that, Woody, or can you take it from here?
I think I can take it from here. I'm going to need to share my screen, and let's do that. So let me get the opening slide up here. And I guess I'll go into, oh, I realized, oh, hold on just a second. Got to do something here. Can you see this floating panel up here? Is that something you guys can see? No, good. Okay, then I can leave that. Give me just a moment.
All I'm seeing is just a white screen.
Good. Let's see. I gotta get my notes ready, sorry. So, oh, you're just seeing a white screen?
Yes.
Oh, no, you should see the opening slide here.
I got white.
White, oh boy, and so what's the problem then? So it's showing that it's sharing, and it is on my screen. And well, I'll stop share and start again. Let's see, stop share. Screen share. There we go. There we go. Now you should see it.
Yes.
Good. All right. Now, if I can just find this. Oh boy. All right. So, well, I might need to wing it without my notes. They're not coming up. It's always something. So this is an abbreviated version of the Climate Center's Climate Safe California presentation. I'm abbreviating it because I think that most of you are, let me see if I almost got the notes up. No. Sorry. So at first I want to say that I am, I do this subcommittee on my own volunteer time, just like all of you. I do work at the Climate Center during the day. And I also, this was someone else's idea. I didn't ask that this be placed on the agenda, so I just wanted folks to know that. So for folks that may not be familiar with the Climate Center, our mission is speed and scale greenhouse gas reductions. We played a big role in spearheading the formation of Sonoma Clean Power here in Sonoma County, and then statewide. I've been working roughly since 2014 on spreading community choice around the state. There's now 23 operational, serving, leading the way on clean energy innovation. And let me get finally got the notes up. Thought I was already here, but I guess not. Okay, so we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, and we do focus on state policy. So I'm actually not working so much in sort of local Sonoma County related efforts. Let's see. So, all right. Got a fancy one there. So the essence of Climate Safe California, it's a 5-year initiative to enact bold policies that are required by the science to be on track, for California to be on track to be in compliance with the science by 2030, for a vibrant, equitable, and healthy future for all. And the idea is that by 2025, the state will have enacted accelerated climate policies as required by the latest science to put us on track by 2030 for net zero emissions through carbon sequestration and creating resilient communities. And we do need bold policies and advanced goals to address the climate crisis. So there are 3 guiding principles through which we screen any prospective policies we consider. They must be based on the latest science, foster a just transition for workers and communities, and prioritize climate justice. Let's see. I'm just going to get these all set up here. We hear a lot about how California is a leader, but there are several instances around the world and even in our own federal government where there are advances. And we just heard one from Sarah earlier about Norway. Most of their EVs being sold, or most of their vehicles being sold are now electric vehicles. So these are just a couple quick examples. I won't go through each of them as I want to move expeditiously here. Our existing goals are pretty good, or at least we might have thought they were, but we're hard pressed to achieve, and we are hard pressed to achieve them as they are, but unfortunately, given the latest science, they're not good enough. We need to set goals that are aligned with what's needed. There's goal fatigue. We keep advancing the goals, but the problem is that we're realizing that the that the impacts are coming harder and faster, and we're in the age of consequences, and the laws of physics can't be argued with. So it's just something we really need to do, whether we like it or not, if we want to be to be in line with the science. So the program includes 4 pillars, and they are accelerating phase out of fossil fuels, scaling up nature-based carbon sequestration on natural and working lands. This is not the kind of sequestration that you hear about, carbon capture and storage from, say, fossil burning power plants or that kind of thing. And then investing in grid modernization and a transformation to a decentralized energy system that fosters energy democracy, and underpinning it all is identifying the funding to do all these things. So Going through each of those. So now, I'll go through each of these a little bit more. So accelerating fossil fuel phase out, halting oil and gas drilling in California, halting fracking, investing in public and private efforts to transition communities and workers to good quality jobs or early retirement. Start, putting those oil drilling workers to work remediating and plugging abandoned wells. I've heard there's anywhere from like 10 to 30 years worth of work plugging and remediating all these wells around the state. Establishing health and safety buffer zones around any oil and gas drilling operations. And on the sort of generation side, establishing 100% greenhouse gas free decentralized electricity and energy storage by 2030. And actually, there's good news on that front. On the clean power, we're doing pretty good. That's where most of the greenhouse gas reductions have been coming from in the state. So the second one is sequestration. And so I'm going to do something here. I want to hide this floating panel because it's blocking my view. Okay, now I can see better. Okay, so sequestering an additional 100 million megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. We may be talking a lot about that kind of thing as we go through the course of our discussions, but that's referring to carbon dioxide equivalent is based on the greenhouse gas intensity of carbon dioxide. And there are other greenhouse gases, so the equivalent to whether it's nitrous oxide or methane or some other greenhouse gas pollutant, it's equalized along the lines of carbon dioxide. So 100 million megatons carbon dioxide equivalent. And that would be through carbon farming and smart gardening and climate smart habitat restoration and enhanced protected habitats. So investing in community energy resilience. Oops, went too far. That's all around funding the implementation of resilience plans in all California counties and cities by 2025. And there's already some existing law that helps on that front, and we have a bill that I'll talk about a little later that's coming up that's just been introduced this year, and implementing clean energy community microgrids with storage, including electric vehicles, starting with critical facilities in lower income communities by this year. Let's see. So the fourth one, funding climate action. So there's a laundry list of possible funding strategies to produce the funding that it would be needed to, $20 billion or even more per year for climate action. And I'm not going to go through each of these, but there are a lot. And I'll just note one, which is this ballot measure down near the bottom there. It's a ballot measure for $30 billion that is in the works for 2022 that would equitably fund climate measures in a very big way. So there will be more about that this year as it will be heard in the legislature to be on the ballot in 2022. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the next few slides are about legislation. This is about policy, so it's state policy. So this is the legislature mostly. There's some activity with some other governmental agencies, but it's mostly about getting bills passed. So the first thing I'll mention actually is that I don't have a slide for our targets bill, meaning the bills that would move the targets from the current targets of 2045 and 2050 to 2030. But that bill has been drafted, and we're looking for an author for it. So the ones that are in the work that are actually that I'll mention here are around clean energy and community energy resilience. SB 99 has been introduced. So that one is already sort of in the works at the legislature. The second one, and that would provide resources for local communities like Sebastopol to be able to set up its own, say, community microgrid, or help put clean power facilities at critical facilities in Sebastopol, that kind of thing. And then the second bill, it's sort of a tandem bill to fund these kinds of projects, starting with disadvantaged communities around the state. This next one is, we're also working on a utility reform bill. It's a bill that's aimed at transforming the big utilities from a vertical operator to an open access poles and wires only transmission and distribution. The idea is to make it much easier for communities and project developers to deploy clean energy systems. And a follow-on to this bill will be a reformation of the compensation structure of the big utilities, so that their compensation, what they're paid for, actually incentivizes them to do things that help these folks like community choice agencies or tribes or local governments to do projects on the grid, that they would be paid to, do the interconnections quickly, share data, all that kind of thing. Just sort of be a good faith partner, if you will. So we're also planning to sponsor a sequestration bill. And again, this is not carbon capture. This is about regenerative agriculture that enhances soil as a carbon sink, for example. And so we've got, folks here in Sonoma County and near Sebastopol that are experts in this field. And so there's a lot of opportunity for sequestering carbon. So that's a big part of what we're planning to do. And then I mentioned there's also some agency work. So the Air Resources Board, the California Public Utilities Commission, California Energy Commission, and just working with them and working in coalition with other statewide organizations to move the needle that are needed for reforms at these agencies, so that so that the implementation of the legislation gets passed can actually be optimized, be of the most benefit. So this slide is an attempt to show where we are and where we need to be by 2030. The red bar on the left is the long-standing 1990 benchmark, 431 million megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. The gold bar is the 2018 actual number, which actually came down a little bit to 425 million megatons. Good, but not nearly good enough. The pinkish bar is the current state goal, 259 million megatons. But what's circled there on the right is, in the green circle, is where we need to be by 2030. And according to the science, via a mix of steep reductions and sequestration. It can come either way. It can be reductions or sequestration. It's going to be a bit of both in all likelihood. So to get to net negative, hopefully by, net negative by 2035. I kept this slide in here. Just, I left a lot of the slides I left out were the slides where it's trying, more along the lines of showing what the problem is and how severe it is, and pictures of wildfires. And I didn't think y'all needed to see that. I wanted to make it a quicker presentation. I think this group, I'm going with the assumption that this group, is convinced, and so it's from a starting point. But I kept this one in here. The estimate was $150 billion, the red line there, $150 billion in damages from the 2018 wildfires alone. So just pointing to the eye-popping cost of inaction of these kinds of calamities hitting the state. And that's about 2/3 of the state's annual budget. So it's not a small number. And also just pointing, I kept this one in here too, just to point that the governor himself agrees that the goals are inadequate. We must fast track the goals. So, and there are a whole bunch of our endorsers. We have over 800 endorsements already. And quite a number of the high profile ones have said pretty much the same thing, that yeah, the goals are inadequate. We're looking at the science. We need to do better than 2045. We need to get there by 2030. So So we just had City of San Anselmo in Marin County endorsed last night. And, you know, it's a broad list of elected officials, scientists, non-governmental organizations. We have folks from the insurance industry, labor, and just, you know, regular homeowners. So a wide variety of folks. And so the invitation, you know, Climate Center would invite the city of Sebastopol to sign on, take a look at it for a deeper dive on the science and whatnot. It's all there at the Climate Safe California website. There's some, you know, papers that really delve into both the, you know, the science side of you know, what, you know, where it sort of explains where we need to be. And then also we're building the sort of palette of tools that we need to, you know, how to actually achieve a goal that's that ambitious. So what all the endorsement is, it's a public pledge of support to accelerate the climate goals. And the wish is that, or the intention is that if California can do this, it can inspire other states and countries to do similar. So that's pretty much, I think that was it. Yes, that was it. All right.
Thank you, Ray. That was amazing. A lot of information that you got to us in a short period of time. I would love for one of the council members to just speak to what you guys would like to receive from this committee, this in terms of the Climate Safe California endorsement. Diana?
Sure. Sarah and Sarah is the representative on the Regional Climate Protection Action Committee, and I'm involved in Zero Waste Sonoma. I happen to sit in on the RCPA meeting where this particular Safe California resolution was considered and adopted. I would say from my perspective, and I'm going to leave the details to Sarah, who's actually on that committee. From my perspective, this is an aspirational resolution. It creates big vision goals. And those big vision goals for me are not so much about whether we can actually achieve them. It's about setting that big vision so that other entities can then build and funnel in the funding and support that's needed all the way up to state and up to federal. So for me, this seems like a really great aspirational goal that we as a town can embrace and then push forward. So I'm all for it. But Sarah, some details because you actually are on that RCPA committee.
Well, for me, it's pretty straightforward. The RCPA is our regional unit that's coordinating all of our cities in the county. The RCPA endorsed this measure, and I thought, well, if we're all going to take this seriously, we might as well work together and all be rowing the same direction in the same river, maybe not doing all the same work or having exactly the same priorities, but it would be wise for us to have the same framework. So that's why I was interested after the conversation at RCPA on January 11th. I think, Diana, you contacted me with a prompt from, if I may mention, former Mayor and Council Member Larry Robinson, who's part of Woody's Climate Center. And Larry was giving us the nudge as well. So I think it's part of, well, it's that decision. Do we want to identify with the regional group and encourage other cities to identify in this same kind of aspirational way? Or do we want to be, I don't know, independent for some reason? Diana and I were interested in bringing this to the council, and I'll say very directly, we wanted it to run it by you guys first in case you wanted to own it in some way and be part of the two of us bringing it to the council and part of that decision making.
Go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, so to answer your question, which I realize we didn't answer, what would we like from the Climate Action Subcommittee? One is a decision about whether this group feels that this is a resolution that you would like to endorse, an initiative you would like to endorse, because we, as Sarah said, see you as really, the group that can focus on issues like this. In terms of the mechanics of it, Larry Robinson did send to me a couple of versions of a draft resolution. So the next step would be a resolution would need to, you decide whether you're interested in supporting this. Resolution would need to be drafted. It would then be placed on the city council agenda at the meeting, which would probably be in February, late February, I would bet, if we can get in there. We would want, if this group endorses this resolution, we would want someone from this group to be there to speak on behalf of the resolution. So in essence, you would be moving it forward with Sarah and me behind it also. The other option is so you guys could own that whole process. You decide, you look at these draft resolutions, you put together a work group that then drafts the resolution, you let us know, you present it forward. The other option, though, is depending on what your time commitment and other goals are, you could say, you know what, we really endorse this. Actually, you could say, we're looking for volunteers to draft the resolution. And you could look at me in the eye, and I would probably say, oh, okay, I would be happy to join forces with someone to draft this resolution. So I would be happy to carry some of the weight of that process. So that would be one way that we could facilitate, Sarah and I could still engage and facilitate that process. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that's helpful. So I think what's in front of us for today is, the question is, do we want to endorse it and ask the city council to take it up and with a resolution? And I feel a little bit like, after hearing Woody say that he was preaching to the choir, that it's possible this group would just have a automatic thumbs up to this resolution. But I'd like to offer, if anyone would like to have some comment on the issue of whether we want to endorse Climate Safe California. Is there anyone that wants to speak to that? Jerry, please.
So whether we endorse it or don't endorse it, I think has to do with after we study it and look at it in more detail than just the deck that Woody put forward. That's less to do with it and more to do with why we're here. If we're just a matter of saying yes to things that come by and say we endorse this because it looks good and it has the right title, then what value add do we bring to the deal? And so I'd like to study it more before I would turn it around and look at the materials and say, we endorse it because, and then it actually comes back to, I had my hand raised before on our voting. When somebody votes against something, it's why did they vote against it? And we're endorsing it. Why do we endorse it? There are specific measures in here, and some of them are relevant to us and some of them are not relevant. We should be able to explain precisely why we endorse it.
Joshua, please.
Just to say that independent of the whole subcommittee action, this Climate Safe California program and recommendation has been on my radar for a while. So I personally have spent a fair amount of time digging through it and feel that it's solid and extensive. And I'm of the frame of mind that, yeah, it's an aspirational goal. It's sort of a, can we all get on board with these things being a good idea? What we're actually able to achieve on the local level, I think, is still the open topic of our whole committee. I think we're still going to be figuring out what we can do on the local level. But to say that in principle, we support these lofty goals and the fact that people are trying to work at a statewide level, I see no possible harm in that personally.
So yes, Lisa. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I agree. I think that we could kind of endorse it and move on quickly to things that are more local that we can actually get our teeth more into. But I wouldn't want to see us kind of get stuck on the, intricacies of what we would think are positive about it and what we wouldn't. I don't know. So I'm in favor of endorsement so we can move on.
So we have 2 voices ready to move forward with endorsement, and 1 voice saying, hey, let's take a little more time with this and understand where we want to go. Is there, Diana, were you wanting to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, one other option on the table here, completely acceptable, is to consider this an informational presentation from Woody and to simply bump it back to the city council members who were interested in the topic already, which are Sarah and me, and recognize that perhaps in the midst, in terms of your process, you may not be at a point where you want to be looking at something anew and endorsing it off the bat. So I just put that out there. You don't have to rubber stamp this. If you all feel, if you vote to support it, that's awesome. And I would work with someone to draft the resolution. If you don't want to support it, that's fine. If you want to just say we support it, but we just do not want to get distracted into the process, that's fine too.
So any thoughts about that? So the council is definitely willing to just take this back under their own advisement without coming through us. Luke, go ahead.
I just want to say, in the interest of time, maybe just call it to a vote and see where the chips fall.
I feel comfortable doing that, but want to make sure that we register any objections. So anyone in favor of just moving forward with endorsing the Climate Safe California as a recommendation that the council take this up? Will you raise your hands, please? So it looks like we have 2/3. Are there objections that want to be heard? All right. So I think then my preference would be that we ask Diana to take it from here, with us giving a aspirational yes, we would like the city to move this forward, but no, we don't want to dig into it because we have more important local work or more relevant to our specific function local work to focus our energies on, and just move on to our next agenda item unless someone has anything else to say before we do so. Yes, Diana.
Just want to make sure I'm clear on direction here. Would it be accurate to state that our climate action subcommittee has endorsed the Safe California platform? Yes, great. And then if I could ask, does this committee want to see the resolution drafts as we move forward? You know what I'll do? I will forward them to you, Kenna, and you can make a decision about that. But I will make sure that I forward a draft of a resolution to Kenna, and it can be handled from there by the subcommittee.
Yeah, I'll make sure to share that with you guys.
Although, I put it out. Okay, so you'll share it with them. Great. So we've resolved it. Thank you.
So moving on, that took longer than we had planned on it taking. So we now have 35 minutes left in our meeting time. Yes, Woody, please.
Sorry, I just really wanted to say real quick. First, I didn't say before, thank you for spending some time on this. The other is, if anyone has questions you want to dig down, you want to know more, feel free to reach out to me. And then the third thing was, if there is a point where someone from the subcommittee does make some form of presentation or anything to the city council, I'd prefer that it not be me. It should be someone else, I think, that would do that. And I can work with that person, but I think that might be better. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, we were really hoping it was going to be you, but we'll accept your declining that position. Sarah, were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Just so everybody knows, we have tentatively reserved a hearing date in the future. It's not certain right now what it is because other items are moving around in the Tetris of our agenda planning. Is potentially end of February, potentially March. And Diana and I are online to bring it forward already, sort of in that informal process. In addition to letting this group review the draft of our staff report and whatever we present, we'll be sure to note your endorsement.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we have 34 minutes to move forward until the end of this meeting, and would really like to get to the kind of meaty part of our discussion, which would be a discussion of our goals. So I'm hoping we could do a quick 2 minutes, each person sharing what they feel like are the most important and timely. Like what do you want to work on most, and what do you want to work on first? Is there anyone that would like to go first, or should I just call on people as they come up in the order that you show on my screen? All right, I'm calling on you, Lisa, because you're right there next to me, in my view.
All right. Well, there's so many things that I'd like to work on. Top of the list is probably funding. There's something that I'm interested in exploring of seeing if Sebastopol can become a charter city, which would enable us to be able to put additional transfer taxes on when real estate gets sold that could be used for climate. Without being a charter city, we're not able to do that, but it's not a very complicated process to become a charter city. So that's one thing. There's so many other ideas for funding. But also I was really interested in moving ahead with an all-electric reach ordinance for the city. It seems like more and more that's going to be done for us at the state level. It looks like probably in January of 2022, the Title 24 California energy compliance will be requiring new structures to be all electric, but it's not a sure thing yet. It's still maybe could use some more push. And Woody, you might be able to speak to that more, but it seems like yeah, that's a real possibility at this point. I'm also interested in seeing if there's a way to encourage contractors, electricians, plumbers to help their customers at least even know about that they can get an electric water heater or other appliance that most people don't even think about it. It's not on their radar, and it's not in the installer's interest to kind of complicate things with that. You know, they just they're getting nothing out of it. Let's see, there was something else too.
Lisa, I think if you have more, I would ask you to put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's hard for anyone to sum up what they want to do for climate in 2 minutes. So Woody, you're next on my screen.
Okay, well, I'll be brief because I'll say I'm in line with what Lisa said for her first one. I think it really starts with funding. So I want to spend, I want to work with some folks on the committee on digging into ways that, we can identify funding sources that are sustainable, to help be able to do all the things that we want to do. And then in terms of the kind of program priorities I'd want to prioritize are, looking at programs through, a certain lens, and that lens would include things that would help the lowest income folks among us in the community, and looking for programs. I think, transportation being a big greenhouse gas chunk. So transportation, maybe energy. I mean, I mostly work on energy in my work at the Climate Center, but with all of them, also really looking at, are we doing something, that's replicable, and how could we, as we pursue it, how can we make it replicable? As I said in my opening comments last meeting, those are some of the sort of the high level things that I'm interested in. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Luke, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. So I had already been identified in our Kenna and Josh's meeting, in my meeting on Sunday, that'll be helping take the lead on research and composition and duties of other city subcommittees. So if anybody's interested in helping me with that, just looking at other climate action plans that cities have ratified. Councilmember Gurney, I definitely would love to talk with you about, especially considering all your work with RCPA over the years and that context, which will be helpful, just kind of seeing where we're at in comparison to other cities, what strategies we can replicate, and what other strategies we can create and pass on to other cities, as most are also kind of early in this process as well. So that's definitely something I'm excited about. And just generally, as an organizer, I'm always looking for ways to increase community engagement. I think this committee is a great start, and I'm excited to be working with all of you more. And I think there's any ways that we can identify community leaders, organizations that can be part of our work and that can help us amplify the work that we do as we communicate it to the public. So that's, I'll leave it there. There's definitely a lot more. As I mentioned last meeting, I work as a housing advocate as well, and that's, I'm always thinking about housing and climate and how they relate to each other. Learning that it's a Brown Act body, I don't know how much work I'm going to be able to do on housing as a result. So if anybody wants to pick that up, I'd be happy to help you out with that too. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, Diana, you're next for me.
Okay. So my interest is really in environmental climate change action, kind of the policy level issues, and how we within town can actually implement them in a way that's practical. Something that was said by a couple of the members of the committee in our initial meeting resonated with me, specifically trying to model a climate friendly lifestyle. So I suppose from my perspective, if I were going to focus on one specific area of interest, it would be on creating pragmatic measures, pragmatic ways that real people in our town can actually implement in lifestyle changes, climate action principles. But I'm open to whatever.
All right, so the next person I see is Jerry.
Well, I sent you a list, which was extensive, this last week. But the one I'd focus on here is that my interest is in how we can structure the efforts that we do into a model that other cities can follow. As a small city, the impact of whatever we do is going to be small, unless we can show that other cities can do it too, and they pick it up and do it. And that's the kind of thing we saw with CCAs. It started with small places, and eventually we covered the entire state because it became compelling to do just that. So any of the efforts we look at, both how did the city do it? What's the template for doing that? And how do we advertise that we did it? How do we show it as a package so others can see that as well? And that's why I actually have one item in my list that said press. It was, how do we advertise it so other people can take that away? I think we have a responsibility, and it was an aha for me when I reviewed the strategy for RCPA for a friend. And I saw a number of things that I thought were gaps in it because people want to do certain things. They feel good about doing these things. But as far as the climate's concerned, they won't have all that much impact because of where we are. Transportation's a major problem for us. I don't know that we can address transportation because of where we are unless we address more fundamental things about density. But I think we have a responsibility to look at the cap. The cap is old. The cap surprised me because it was part of a county cap. And in the case of Sunnyvale, that wasn't the case. It's a standalone cap. We're just a chapter, actually a sub-segment in a chapter in the county's cap. And I think we have a responsibility to look at that, understand it totally, own it, and update it. And part of that, which I also saw missing, and I see missing almost every place, is development of a set of metrics. You can't tell if you're improving, if anything that you're doing is making any sense, unless you have metrics, you've listed them, and you measure them on a regular basis. So those are the three things that I would focus on. The fact that what we do, whatever we do, it has to be a model for other small cities. We have a responsibility to own the cap, and we should do that first. And you can't tell if the cap's working and the efforts that we have are working unless we have metrics and the city lives by those metrics. And that was less than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Jerry. I just want to clarify for anyone who can't see the chat that not everyone knows what a CAP is, and that is a climate action plan. And I believe that was sent out with the before our last meeting. Everyone got a copy of that, but if anyone needs that sent again, I'm happy to do so. Just shoot me an email and be like, I've gotten too much stuff already, which is the CAP, and I'll send it to you again. All right, next person is Sarah Elliott.
I think one of my main things is just finding ways, I think Luke was talking about this, but like finding ways to get people involved, especially like youth. I don't know how much like a subcommittee would be able to do this, but involving groups like the Sunrise Movement or the club I was in, Eco Action, like outreach to schools, education, like educating the student, like elementary schools or middle schools about climate and what they can do in the future. Also, transportation is also important to me, like finding ways to incentivize electric cars or public transport, or maybe even like city bikes. I don't really know. And then another thing that I'm not sure if this is very relevant, but like some sort of community like composting thing where people can drop off scraps and then pick up compost, put in their gardens or something like that. I don't know. Those are just some ideas that I was thinking of.
Thank you so much. Okay, Joshua, you're up.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to answer this question in the short-term, long-term kind of frame that Kenna kind of referenced. In the short term, I feel like we were kind of given a to-do list by the city council when they put together the call for this committee, and that's Kenna kind of put that at the front in a bulleted list. There was a request on the CAP to review that and update it, which I totally agree should be a priority. There was also this Priorities Climate Emergency Resolution, which was listed below, that had been given to the city by Sebastopol Climate Action. That one to me feels like a low-hanging fruit. It's sort of achievable to kind of get through that list and say, of these 8 things, what do we think is most important? What's most practical for the city? What's less practical for the city, et cetera. I feel like that one might be a little easier to bite off than the CAP. The CAP's a little bigger. So anyhow, I feel like we've sort of been asked to do those things. So I'd like to keep those balls rolling in the short term. Personally, like I've said, I'm kind of a landscape scale and site-based guy. I've done a lot of work in urban green infrastructure. So I'm really interested in that sequestration on public lands, working lands, on natural lands, really interested in the interface between the grazing areas and the Laguna and the city, and the Sebastopol Inn, which is becoming like a homeless refuge, and the Laguna, which is a camping area, and how that connects to public lands and city lands and parklands and et cetera. So that kind of landscape edge there is a place where I personally would know how to generate projects and potentials where it could engage community action. So that's kind of my long-term interest and the things that would be fun for me to work on later. So.
Thank you. Okay, Sonali.
Hi, folks. Let's see here. I am interested in brainstorming solutions for transitioning folks from one to the other, just as Woody in his presentation shared with, you know, what do we do with the oil workers and how we move that along. I feel like that's an important piece in getting buy-in, is knowing that those ways we're shifting are being held and supported and not just left. So that's one thing. I think it would be good for us, as Luke and Sarah shared, to make sure that we're liaisoning with the county and state and other institutions and keeping an idea pool bank going, so we're all not reinventing the wheel but sharing information. I think it would be great to do an audit of our whole entire system and go in and see where we can, pinch and pull and change and modify to be more economical with our expenditures as far as climate goes. And the fun, playful, creative side of me wants to take all of that, and same with Sarah and Luke, and offer education and possibly create some sort of, Sarah had mentioned Norway, and I thought of Iceland. Iceland, I was told, I don't know if it's true, they have a troll commissioner in their government, and it's like the spokesperson for the hidden folk, and having somebody who can help us be excited and understand these other aspects of nature and how we all fit together, and bring that education piece and kind of make it exciting and be inspirational for other places and make it fun at the same time.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dina.
Hi, a really quick question. If we have something we want to share for the group to consider, and maybe it would spark somebody's interest in one of these subgroups to integrate it or use it, do we have a way that we are going to be doing that?
Well, we're going to be revisiting our plan due to
So that falls into
the
that.
Brown Act. Yeah, so
Okay, well, I don't need to spend a lot of time about that. It's just, I guess I'm looking forward to hearing how we will handle sharing that ideas for us all to consider.
In the interim, you can always drop things into the chat at a meeting.
Okay, all right. So I am interested in, as a group or some of us, to have maybe the idea of a matrix, but maybe add a little bit something else onto it for every action or policy or decision or educational opportunity or whatever that we come up with or we're promoting. Is it a multi-solution, and is it equitable? Are we making it available to more than one group? And multi-solution, because we really need things that are solving more than one problem or doing more than one good. We don't have time to do everything one by one. And so just somehow coming up with something to give us something to think about when we're doing whatever we're doing. I'm interested in natural sequestration. So I like what I heard about the open spaces and what can we do there, and maybe incorporating our community as education wise, or getting them involved somehow in doing something like that with us. And by that token, you know, how can we take the next step towards getting people's carbon gardens to be continued this year, all the people that started last year, and take it up a notch or educate that way, or somehow work that avenue with sequestration as well. And the other idea I had was kind of a simple one. The refrigerator systems in stores are big emitters. So could we do some sort of survey to find out what is the refrigerant in our stores, and could we get that changed if they're the ones that put a lot of greenhouse gas out, and is there money to help people if they wanted to change their store? And that is like a little thing, but all combined, that makes a lot of greenhouse gas, and it can make a difference by changing the store refrigerators.
Great, thank you, Dina. All right, Alex, you're up.
On that one, do you know what gas is usable? Because I don't know of one.
Jerry, I don't think we want to talk about that right now. I'd like to get through the group and just hear.
I'll get you the information.
Running out of time. Yeah, you can put those kind of things in the chat, and you can even send people individual messages in the chat if you have a specific question for an individual. So Alex, you're up. But I can't hear you. You don't, it doesn't look like you're muted, but maybe your mic isn't working.
So I'm on the phone. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Now you're muted.
You're going in and out.
Sorry.
Okay.
How about now? Is this better? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry about that. So education is, for me, something that, you know, kind of gathers, you know, pieces of all the different things that we're talking about, and really what we're looking at is educating our community, because they're the ones that are, you know, essentially are the systems that we have in the communities are using a lot of the climate, or a lot of the energy and the resources that we have. So if we can empower our youth, I think starting with the youth is a great thing, as Sarah pointed out. And then moving towards, because, you know, obviously, you know, kids talk to parents, you know, there's like an education up where I feel like the youth is really bringing up that education to, hey, well, why do we have a propane heater? Why, you know, is there, you know, when we need a new one, can we get an electric one? You know, and like, there's all those conversations that, you know, can come in the house, and like we're learning about those things. I think another way that education can be powerful is just, I think, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? Someone could think they're doing the climate friendly thing when really it's the opposite. So I think just figuring out a way we can create a platform to get information out there. I think one thing we talked about in the past was there's a newsletter through maybe the water bill. You know, honestly, Woody or Lisa, I don't know if you guys have information, but if there's ways that we can get information out, obviously right now with COVID, it's more challenging, but you know, we could table at the farmer's market. There's a lot of things we could be doing to educate once we get, you know, to a place where we have a little more community interaction. I think one thing we could help is promoting evergreen opt-up. I think it's, to me, one of the most simple and like straightforward ways we can transition to clean power through all of our consumers within Sebastopol is just opting up to evergreen power through Sonoma Clean Power. It's so easy. You just connect it through the website with PG&E. And if you guys, and any of you guys haven't done it, I recommend doing it. It costs a little bit more per month. So if it's something you can afford, it's worthwhile doing. And you're using, I think, 90% renewable or more resources. So I think just telling that story, because that was something I didn't know about a year ago, right? So, and then I think the last thing is really looking at, with that education, working to build the Sebastopol brand and kind of our story around our eco-friendly kind of education to our community, and also being able to attract tourism, you know, ecotourism with the Sebastopol brand. And I think it will help it will kind of be a cycle, right? If we're letting people know that we're kind of into ecotourism, we're doing all these good things, then I think we're going to get more momentum and more information about what we can be doing better, and about and if we're able to get more revenue for the city or the county, we can be able to propel that more into our climate positive goals. I think that was pretty much it, and I think there was some other points there, but I think the last thing is if we can find other cities that we can connect with that are doing something similar, if we can connect to them to kind of brainstorm and share ideas about what's working for them.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, as mentioned before, Luke has offered to take the lead on liaising with other municipalities. And so anybody that's interested in joining him on that, please reach out to him. Sarah Gurney, you are the last one besides me.
All right. Well, let me just say very quickly, I can see what my role is going to be. I think I have to connect all the dots that are moving around here with the information I have from my involvement. For instance, Sebastopol has passed a climate emergency resolution. That's done. We can get that out in a packet to you. The RCPA is considering a tax measure for 2022. Et cetera, et cetera. I won't take time updating all the points that I've got, and hopefully I can just contact people briefly with that. If I were involved in something more than doing that networking, I would like it to be like on the street and really visible. Like, I don't know, composting or something that people see, because if we can see that action, that individual action is going to be easy for each of us to do. And I'd just like to work with every one of you on all of your ideas. I'll be back in touch.
Thank you. And briefly for myself, I am really interested in metrics because I do think it's important that we measure things. I have a fantasy that we could combine community engagement with especially our youth partners, local youth partners, and community education with getting a baseline data survey of households in Sebastopol with a door-to-door survey as soon as that would be considered safe to do, or if we can work out protocols where we would consider that safe to do, where it could be a combination data gathering and education effort that would be led by our the youth in our community. So that's my big fantasy, that going to the kind of doing more than a thing at once. I'm very interested in terms of replicability, in seeing how fast and how far we can go with microgrids. Because I think that's an important modeling piece for other municipalities, but also listening to the input from RCPA and the research Luke is doing around other municipalities, and maybe perspectives that Woody has coming in about from Climate Center about what initiatives would be most important for us to model for other cities. So that would be my priorities. So we are very close to the end of time. I want to, because Joshua, I'm guessing you have not gotten a lot of action items to take down, but let me give you a couple more that I will be working obviously with Diana and Alan to figure out what our Brown Act responsibilities are and how we can structure ourselves to be maximally efficient while meeting the transparency standards of the Brown Act. I will take, in addition, I will take this list of priorities and try to do some kind of analysis on it to see, where the trends and themes are and who's on which ones. And in addition, to meet that request of council, or at least to take a first step towards meeting the request of council that we prioritize the actions, the list of climate actions that were put out by Sebastopol Climate Action, that I would send a survey to the group, basically asking all you guys to rank order them in terms of which ones are our priorities. and then collate that data and for the next meeting. And then we will get an agenda out at least 72 hours in terms of how the city works, which is about a week before the next meeting. And please feel free to reach out to me or Joshua or Luke if you have concerns or ideas for, how you'd like to see things going forward. It's going to take us a little while to get our feet under us. So please bear with us in terms of getting the committee going. But I think we all really want to move it forward and make this a very action-oriented group. So I'm going to hand the rest of the meeting over to Joshua, who's going to summarize the action items.
You pretty much covered everything I was going to mention, even the things that hadn't actually happened in the meeting. So I don't know that I can add to that, since you basically took on the whole to-do list yourself, so far as I can tell. One thing I want to suggest, kind of in tandem with that survey for the Sebastopol Climate Action List prioritization, which I think is great. I was going to ask people to look at that. On the other front, I would just ask people to start trying to read up on the Climate Action Plan, which, as noted, was a chapter in the larger RCPA framework, I believe, or a chapter in the larger framework. Anyhow, we've all received that as a attachment at this point, and you can ask for it again if you didn't do it. But could everybody just try to read that by the next meeting and start to digest your take on it? As part of the facilitation committee, I'm on board with Kenda in terms of trying to, figure out the next agenda, collate these things into potential groups. I feel like I have ideas for a few committees based on what people listed, and we can talk about that next time. And one final kind of lingering bit, which is sort of a question to Diana and also to Kenna, is I'm not sure where we left the drafting the resolution subject. If Diana, if you said you would draft the resolution, or if you said you wanted some support drafting the resolution. So that's sort of one of those potential action items. I'm not sure if we got that clarified. So
I volunteered to draft the resolution. If there's anyone in the room who would like to join me in that effort, that would be great. If not, that's fine also. I would work with Sarah on pulling that together. And then the plan would be to forward that to Kenna in draft form, who would then distribute it to the rest of you. That's my understanding.
Right.
Sounds good. And then my understanding is that you will be requesting that someone from the committee come to that once it does get on the agenda, come to that meeting to present it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think we all agree that that person will be Woody, correct?
No, we would all like that. Everyone Woody would like that.
I mean, I'll do it. I'm just offering it up to someone. If someone else wants to do it, I think if folks want me to do it, that should be, I'll do it.
That's okay. I'm kidding. I just, a lighthearted laugh I find can be very useful sometimes. Is there anyone in the room who would like to join me in drafting this resolution, or raise your hand if so? No, then it's me and Sarah. Thank you.
Jerry's hand is up and Sarah's hand is up. So Sarah, your hand was up first and then it went down, and then Jerry's hand is up too.
Well,
I'll ask you guys just
Hands up for a different reason.
Yeah.
I have a question. We keep talking about the material. We'll send it back out to you again. Is it possible for us to have since we're covered by the Brown Act, like the Planning Commission has, a page where the materials which are given to us are posted and the links to those materials are posted, so that if somebody wants the Climate Action Plan, they can go to that page and find the link. If they want RCPA's copy, there's a link there as well. Anything else that we talk about is public anyway. And so in that case, there's no reason not to post it. And that's allowed in the Brown Act, as far as I know.
We will be doing that, just as
Okay.
a FYI.
Good.
Great. So Sarah Gurney, your hand has been up and down and up and down. Was there something you wanted to say?
I always want to talk, but I don't want to say things that have already been stated. So we have March 2nd as the council date. The staff report needs to be out more than a week and ahead of that, about 10 days, so that it can be distributed the Thursday before the meeting, which is going to be the very end of February. So Diane and I and whoever else will be working on that packet and the resolution, or whatever form the action request is. our CPA simply did an endorsement. They did not actually authorize a signature on a resolution.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just, I'm assuming that this is not possible, but we were under the impression initially that we were not going to be under Brown. And I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to not be under Brown. I don't, it's probably not possible, but I just want to, you know, if there's any way we can make that happen, that'd be awesome.
I will bring that forward in my discussions with city staff because we're out of time at this meeting. Luke, I saw your hand was up and now it's down. Did you need to
Answered.
we leave? Okay. All right. So I want to let us leave on time, and it is time. Thank you all so much. We will see you in 2 weeks. All right. Have a great day.